August is the month that decides whether your citrus tree gives you a tree full of sweet, juicy fruit this winter, or a tree full of dry, bitter, small fruit that barely makes it to harvest. And here's the part almost nobody tells you. Most of the damage that ruins a citrus tree's fall and winter fruit isn't caused by frost. It isn't caused by pests. It's caused by what gardeners do or don't do to their tree in the final weeks of summer. There is one specific mistake involving how people water their citrus trees in the heat that quietly destroys more lemon, lime, and orange harvests than anything else. And I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do instead, step by step, before August runs out. Stick around, because near the middle of this video, I'm going to show you the one pruning mistake that literally invites disease straight into your tree. And it's something almost every home gardener does without even realizing it. By the way, one bad planting mistake can cost you years. Avoid it. Get the guide below. I put together a complete fruit tree care guide that walks you through the exact watering, feeding, and pruning schedule for citrus and other fruit trees, broken down by season and climate zone. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to grab the full guide before your tree needs it. Okay, let's start with the single biggest thing people get wrong in August watering. Citrus trees have surprisingly shallow root systems for how big the trees can get, and that shallow root system is exactly why so many people mess up their watering routine without even realizing it. The instinct most people have is to water a little bit every single day, especially when it's brutally hot outside, because it feels like you're helping the tree cope with the heat. In reality, that shallow, frequent watering is one of the worst things you can do. It trains the roots to stay near the surface, where they dry out fast and become stressed the moment you miss a watering day, and it also creates the exact damp surface conditions that invite fungal disease around the base of the trunk. What your citrus tree actually wants in the heat of summer is a deep, thorough soak, not a quick sprinkle. In the hot summer months, you want to water deeply about once or twice a week, not daily, and when you do water, you need that moisture to reach down at least 8 to 12 inches below the surface. A lot of people check the top inch of soil, see it's dry, and assume the whole root zone needs water. But the better method is to use a moisture meter or a simple soil probe, push it down, and see how deep the moisture actually goes. If the top few inches are wet, but everything below that is bone dry, you're not watering long enough, you're just wetting the surface and walking away. The fix is simple. Build a shallow basin or watering ring around the drip line of the tree, fill it slowly, and let the water soak down gradually instead of running off the sides. Do this consistently through August, and you'll notice the leaves staying glossy and full instead of curling or dropping, which is one of the first visible signs of an underwatered citrus tree. Now let's talk about feeding, because timing your fertilizer in August is honestly one of the most misunderstood parts of citrus care. Citrus trees are heavy feeders, meaning they pull a lot of nutrients out of the soil to support both their foliage and the fruit that's actively developing on the branches right now. Most citrus care schedules recommend fertilizing roughly 3 times a year, and the late summer round, typically landing in August or early September, is one of the most important of the entire year because it directly fuels the fruit that will be ripening through fall and winter. If you skip this feeding or you get the timing wrong, you're essentially asking your tree to finish growing a full crop of fruit on empty reserves, and the result is smaller fruit, thinner juice content, and in some cases, fruit that drops early before it even has a chance to ripen. When you fertilize, look for a complete fertilizer that includes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and ideally one with trace micronutrients like iron, zinc, and magnesium. Since citrus trees are notorious for developing nutrient deficiencies that show up as yellowing leaves with green veins, scatter the fertilizer evenly around the base of the tree, extending out past the drip line rather than piling it right against the trunk, and then water thoroughly afterward so the nutrients actually make it down into the root zone, instead of just sitting on top of dry soil. One warning here. Avoid fertilizing during the absolute hottest, most brutal days of summer. If temperatures are spiking dangerously high, wait for a slightly cooler stretch because fertilizing a heat-stressed tree can actually do more harm than good. Let's talk about mulching next, because this is a small step that makes an outsized difference for citrus trees specifically, due to those shallow roots we already talked about. A 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch spread around the base of the tree, but kept a few inches back from the actual trunk to avoid rot, does two critical things during August heat. It locks moisture into the soil, so your deep watering sessions actually last longer between waterings instead of evaporating out within a day or two. It regulates soil temperature, keeping those shallow feeder roots from essentially cooking in soil that can get scorching hot under direct summer sun. The mistake people make with mulch is piling it directly against the trunk, thinking more is better, but that traps moisture against the bark itself, which invites rot and disease right at the base of the tree, exactly where you don't want it. Keep that small gap, spread the mulch out toward the drip line, and you've essentially given your tree a built-in air conditioning and hydration system heading into the rest of summer. Now here's the pruning mistake I promised you at the start of this video, and it is one of the most common things home gardeners get wrong without even realizing they're doing it. Summer, including August, is not the time for heavy, aggressive pruning on a citrus tree because your tree is actively producing fruit right now, and major cuts during fruit production put unnecessary stress on the plant. Completely avoiding pruning altogether during summer is also a mistake, because there are specific things you absolutely should be doing right now. Dead, diseased, or damaged branches should be removed as soon as you spot them, regardless of the season, because leaving dead wood on the tree is basically an open invitation for pests and fungal issues to take hold and spread into healthy tissue. You also want to look for suckers. These are the aggressive, fast-growing shoots that pop up from below the graft point on the trunk, usually somewhere between 4 and 12 inches above the soil line. Suckers are essentially energy thieves. They pull resources away from the productive, fruit-bearing branches above the graft, and if left unchecked, they can eventually take over the entire tree, and you'll end up with a tree that produces little to no usable fruit at all. Find the graft line, look for that obvious change in bark texture or the visible V-shaped scar, and remove any growth coming from below it as soon as you notice it. And here's the mistake that invites disease directly into the tree: using overhead sprinklers or hose sprayers that wet the trunk and leaves excessively, especially combined with any pruning cuts you've just made. Wet trunk bark combined with fresh pruning wounds is exactly the environment fungal pathogens thrive in. Always water at the soil level, never spray water directly onto the trunk or foliage, and if you do need to make any cuts this month, use clean, sharp shears and try to do it on a day when the tree will have time to dry out completely before any watering happens. While you're out there inspecting your tree for suckers and dead wood, this is also the perfect time to do a full pest and disease check, because August heat is prime season for several common citrus problems to explode seemingly overnight. Flip over some leaves and look at the undersides. This is where you'll typically spot aphids, scale insects, and citrus leaf miners before they become a full-blown infestation. Signs to watch for include leaves that are curling unnaturally, a sticky residue on the leaves or branches, which is usually a telltale sign of aphids or scale, and distorted, squiggly trails on new leaf growth, which is the signature damage pattern of leaf miners. Most of these early-stage infestations can be handled with an insecticidal soap or a horticultural oil spray, applied directly to the affected areas, ideally in the cooler parts of the day rather than during peak afternoon heat, since spraying oils in intense direct sun can actually burn the leaves. Catching these problems in August, while they're still small and localized, is dramatically easier than dealing with a full-scale infestation once your tree is trying to ripen fruit in the cooler months ahead. Let's pause here for a second, because I want to make sure you're not making these mistakes on your own trees without a clear system to follow. Stop wasting money replacing dead fruit trees that fail every single year because of preventable issues like the ones we just covered. Get the complete guide below. It includes a full month-by-month calendar for watering, feeding, and pruning citrus and other fruit trees, along with a troubleshooting section for exactly the pest and disease symptoms we just talked about. Scan the QR code on screen right now so you have it saved before your tree needs the next round of care. Now let's talk about something that catches a lot of newer citrus growers. Completely off guard, fruit drop. If you've noticed your tree shedding some of its young, developing fruit through the summer, don't panic. This is actually a normal, natural process where the tree essentially decides it can't support every single piece of fruit it initially set, and it drops the weakest ones so it can focus its energy on the fruit that remains. That said, excessive fruit drop, meaning far more than what feels like a light natural thinning, is often a signal that something upstream is off, usually inconsistent watering, nutrient deficiency, or heat stress, all three of which we've already covered how to fix. If you're seeing heavy fruit drop despite doing everything right on the watering and feeding front, it can actually help to manually thin some of the remaining fruit yourself, removing a portion of the smaller, weaker fruit clusters so the tree can direct more energy and sugar into the fruit that's left, resulting in noticeably larger, juicier fruit at harvest instead of a tree overloaded with lots of small, underdeveloped ones. One more thing that people almost never think about in August, specifically, sun protection for the trunk itself. As citrus trees mature, and if you've done any pruning to open up the canopy for better airflow, you can accidentally expose sections of the trunk and larger branches that were previously shaded by leaves to direct intense summer sun. This sudden exposure can actually cause sunburn on the bark itself, leading to cracked, damaged trunk tissue that becomes a direct entry point for pests and disease. If you notice any newly exposed trunk sections after pruning, or if your tree has always had a fairly open canopy, consider wrapping the trunk with a breathable tree wrap or applying a diluted white latex paint specifically designed for this purpose, which reflects sunlight and keeps the bark from overheating. It's a small step that a shocking number of people skip entirely and then wonder why their tree develops mysterious cracked bark and weak spots a season or two later. Let's also talk briefly about soil drainage, because this becomes especially important during August, when you're watering more heavily and more frequently to combat the heat. Citrus trees are notoriously intolerant of soggy, waterlogged roots, and if your soil doesn't drain well, all that deep watering we talked about earlier can actually work against you, trapping water around the root zone and inviting root rot, instead of helping the tree. If you notice water pooling on the surface for an extended period after watering, or if your soil is heavy clay that stays damp for days, this is worth addressing now rather than later. Working some organic matter or specifically formulated citrus and palm potting soil into the top layer around the tree can meaningfully improve drainage over time, and in more severe cases, some gardeners even build up a raised mound or berm around the base of particularly poor draining spots to keep the root crown slightly elevated and drier than the surrounding soil. Now, as we start heading toward the tail end of summer, keep in mind that some fertilizing schedules treat early autumn, often symbolically marked by a holiday weekend, as the final feeding of the year before you shift into a lighter, less frequent maintenance routine through fall and winter. That means the fertilizing round happening right now in August carries extra weight. It's setting your tree up for its final stretch of active feeding before growth naturally slows down as the weather cools. Getting this last dose right, with the correct balance of nutrients and proper watering afterward to help it absorb, is one of the most impactful things you can do this month for the health of your winter harvest. Let's do a quick recap of everything we've covered, because there's a lot here and I want you walking away with a clear, actionable checklist rather than just a bunch of scattered tips. First, water deeply once or twice a week rather than shallow daily watering, making sure moisture reaches at least 8 to 12 inches down into the soil. Second, fertilize with a complete citrus-specific formula during this late summer window, watering thoroughly afterward to help nutrients reach the roots, and avoid fertilizing on the most extreme heat days. Third, maintain 2 to 3 inches of mulch around the base, keeping it away from direct contact with the trunk. Only do light, necessary pruning right now, removing dead wood and suckers, while avoiding heavy structural cuts and always keeping water off the trunk and foliage. Inspect the undersides of leaves regularly for early signs of pests, and treat small infestations immediately before they spread. Don't panic over light natural fruit drop, but consider manual thinning if it's excessive. And finally, protect any newly exposed trunk sections from direct sun to prevent bark damage. Every single one of these steps is small on its own, but together they're the difference between a citrus tree that limps through the rest of summer and barely produces, versus one that rewards you with a genuinely impressive harvest of sweet, juicy fruit heading into fall and winter. Most gardeners only fix these problems after they've already lost a season's worth of fruit, learning the hard way exactly what their tree needed all along. Hey, don't wait 5 years to realize you planted the wrong tree or spent years fighting problems that a proper care schedule would have prevented from the start. Learn it the right way. Get our complete guide. It lays out the entire year of citrus and fruit tree care in one place, so you're never guessing what your tree needs and when. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to grab the full guide before your tree needs its next round of care. If this video helped you catch a mistake you didn't even know you were making, go check on your citrus tree today. Dig a finger down into that soil. Take a look at the undersides of a few leaves, and make whatever small adjustment you need to make right now, while there's still time in the season to fix it. Your winter harvest is being decided this month, whether you're paying attention to it or not. See you in the next one.